Welcome to Warehouse Automation Matters. I'm your host, Mary Hart, and I'm here with Bryan Batchelder and David Castanon of Datex to discuss the truth about LCAP, Low Code Application Platform in Warehousing. Welcome to the show, guys. Dave, can you start off by sharing a bit about your background and your role at Datex?
Yeah, my educational background is in software engineering. I've been with Datex and in the supply chain industry for roughly 20 years, and I've worn a couple different hats while in my time here. So, kind of seen it all, right? I've done implementation, worked as a BA, I've done a kind of configuration work. So, it gives me a unique perspective approaching clients with their problems and their prospective solutions. I currently sit as the Senior Director of Solution Architecture here. So me and my team are the subject matter experts who kind of marry the solution to their operations.
Thank you. And Bryan, how did you come into the world of warehouse tech, and what do you focus on as VP of product at Datex?
Yeah. So my career in supply chain actually started in early 2002 as part of a startup working on a system to support the custom trade partnership against terrorism. So we worked on a targeting system that would identify risky shipments and send interdiction teams to go stop them at the port before they come to the US. And later on, found myself joining Datex in early 2009 as a software engineer, working on our WMS, implementing many features. And now I found myself the VP of product, where I help manage our product roadmap, identify technology partners like Locus, and work on proof of concepts for features. Lately, a lot of that's been about how to apply generative AI in ways that are actually useful.
Thank you. So we know that over 80% of warehouses still rely on legacy systems. Dave, why do you think so many operations are stuck with outdated WMS platforms, and what's changing now to push them toward modernization?
And we work with a lot of clients replacing legacy systems. And I think a lot of their motto is if it's not broke, don't fix it. So they had a stable platform and it worked for years. But as the market has kind of changed, they need to adapt with that. And what I mean by that is with the e-commerce boom, people are more expecting smaller packages out the door faster, same day delivery, 2 day delivery. So they need to modernize their platform to be able to connect to different shopping carts, do rate shopping, invest in robotics like Locust. So I think just the change of the market has been the biggest point pushing them to modernize their platform. If they're still shipping to local mom and pop stores on a pallet, like you're not seeing those companies change. But the companies who need to kind of keep up and change with the business model, they're really getting pushed to modernize their ecosystem.
And a follow up question to that: what are the top 2 to 3 market shifts that are putting the most pressure on warehouses to rethink how their systems work?
Yeah, I think one is that e-commerce boom, and it was only exacerbated by COVID in 2020. I mean, it's been there probably since the early part of the century, but I order my groceries online at this point and get them delivered. So at that point, I think just the change in market has caused a lot of companies to rethink how are we going to handle the smaller shipments, get them out the door faster. And I think just labor, and I'll use that as a general term, labor shortages with the increase in warehousing costs and operators and finding people to work. How can we increase our throughput with the same staff, get more orders out the door? So I think labor and just the e-commerce market has kind of pushed people to change.
So let's move on to talking about low code. Bryan, from a technical perspective, what exactly is a low code platform, and what makes it different from traditional WMS customization?
Sure. So a low-code platform is a tool that lets you create or modify applications in a way that doesn't expose you to the underlying code, or at least lets you do a lot without accessing the code of the system. One of the most popular frameworks out there is Microsoft Power Apps. Maybe a lot of folks are familiar with. As far as how it changes or how it makes a difference in WMS customization, I can maybe describe the evolution of our legacy product. We built a system the way all WMSs have been built, and it accrued over time a lot of functionality, which meant it was very complicated. It was visually very busy. I'm going to steal a phrase from Dave that a lot of times it looked like you were sitting at the cockpit of a 747, jetliner. Very intimidating to use in some cases, intimidating to set up, could be very error prone. It has lots of extension points, but even that can be limited in what you can do. So now instead we provide a full WMS, but it's made up of Lego blocks that can be swapped and tailored to do exactly what you need to do. A lot of it is about removing what you don't need so that the overall experience is streamlined.
So, Dave, some warehouse leaders hear low code as a term and assume it's a trend for software startups and not warehouse operations. What would you say to those people?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's an incorrect statement, right? It's not a trendy new buzzword. Well, yes, it is trendy and new, but it's here to stay. And what I mean by that is even Microsoft is taking this into account, right? It's this low-code application platform. Microsoft Dynamics 365, SAP, all of those tier one players are developing LCAP platforms just because it's the wave of the future. What I mean by that is, to Bryan's point, you're not buying a Microsoft Office CD and installing Office and Offices. That's what you get. You truly have the power to tailor it to each user, each organization at this point. So it's not a buzzword that's going to go away in a few years. I think it's here to stay, like AI. Those are the platforms of the future.
Perfect. So, Bryan, talk to me about Datex Studio. How does it give non-developers the ability to build apps or configure workflows without writing complex code?
Yeah, so we have a visual UI builder that gets you most of the way there. So you can modify the UI just by dragging and dropping fields, adding new fields, changing where they're mapping to in the data structure of the backend data model, creating user-defined fields for brand new fields we didn't even think of that are very specific to your organization. So all of that can be done without touching a line of code. Then we have a library of workflows that have been designed to be very adaptive and configurable. So those can cover easily 80 to 90% of scenarios, and you're just using a nice user interface to configure them. So those components get you a lot of the way there without ever having to touch any code. And it's nice to have that escape hatch where you can write code if you need to cover a scenario that is novel or new to us. And this is one of those ways that generative AI can truly be useful. A lot of the flagship models from like OpenAI, Anthropic, even Google are really good at writing code now. And we happen to pick the most popular language in the world as our language of our low-code platform, which is TypeScript. And so these models all know this language really, really well. And we're having lots of success with AI coding agents doing a lot of that work. So even some of the more complex scenarios don't have to be written by a non-developer. It's just a non-developer working with an AI agent to implement those.
So as a follow-up question, what are some of the technical choices that allow Datex Studio to support faster onboarding and easier configuration, especially for complex warehouse environments?
Yeah, so it's back to that Lego building block concept. We've implemented a wide variety of warehouse operations in our time, and we've built a library of components to handle all of those scenarios. So in a lot of cases, it's just about picking the right blocks and configuring them. When we do run into something new, we have the tools now to really quickly adapt and build something to handle it. And I would say one of the biggest game changers is the fact that having this low code platform underpinning our WMS means we can really quickly iterate. So we can talk to a customer, gather requirements, implement a first version of it, get it in front of them to use, get feedback from them, make changes even sometimes while we're on the phone or on the meeting with them, or have it ready like the next day. So that turnaround time is really, really fast. And then if the customer is ready for it, the tools allow them to take on some of the work too.
So Dave, in your experience, how does this kind of control change day-to-day operations for warehouses, especially when they're dealing with compliance, labor gaps, like you mentioned, or rapid growth?
Yeah, and Bryan kind of alluded to it with his comments, right? So the ability to have the ability to change the application to tailor it to your needs. So if you have rapid growth and you need to onboard a new sales channel, let's say like you're a new facility, not a new facility, but you're an established organization and you have now an e-commerce sales channel. You don't need a new WMS to handle that. You pick the right Lego blocks, you tailor them to what you need. So it allows you to quickly adapt to what you need to accomplish without going through hard upgrades, hard source code modifications, being off an upgrade path. As long as you're using the LCAP framework that we're providing, it's all going to work. What I mean by that is when we push out upgrades, you're not off on an island or off an upgrade path. All of the LCAP that you're doing you're still within our sandbox, and your sandbox can look completely different than any other client sandbox. It's just easy for organizations to quickly adapt to whatever the challenges they're facing are.
So let's talk about a real world application. Dave, Eversana recently used Datex Studio to integrate with Locus Robotics at their new pharmaceutical facility. Can you walk us through that use case and what made it successful?
Yeah, so Eversana is a large pharmaceutical 3PL. I think they have about 4 or 5 facilities, if I'm not mistaken. And I know they implemented the Origin bot and the Vector bot. I think they have 100 or so bots running around at this point. And what they were really looking to do was to increase their productivity, right? Lower the error rate. So it's pretty slick. I've been to the facility and it was a very successful implementation for them. Again, they used one for more case picking, cart picking, and the other one is more pallet building. Right? So it really made their operations a lot more efficient. And it's just been a smooth process for them at this point.
So, Bryan, from your side, what were the technical or integration challenges you solved to make the Locus One and Datex Studio connection seamless?
So there really weren't many technical challenges. I think the biggest thing was we all, meaning Datex, Eversana, and Locus, collaborated on the process to handle Eversana's serialized pharmaceutical products. And that was straightforward to do because Locus One has the ability to embed calls to custom endpoints as part of its stock workflows. And Datex Studio makes it really easy to spin up custom API endpoints. So we were able to implement all the rigorous serial validation logic inside of a Datex Studio created endpoint, and Locus One just calls it, and it worked very easily. We also did something similar to implement a custom countback process, but the rest of the integration was really a out of the box experience, which was refreshing.
So, Dave, where do you see LCAP making the biggest long term impact in 3PLs, life sciences, food and beverage, etc.?
I think LCAP is going to make a big impact on the entire distribution network, whether it relates to warehouse management systems, transportation management systems. To the point earlier, I think it is the next wave of technology that's coming out, and all of the platforms coming out, like I said, whether it's supply chain platforms or CRMs, they're all going to be LCAP based, right? And it's allowed, especially for like 3PLs. I haven't met a 3PL really whose motto is, if you pay me enough, I'm going to store it and ship it for you. With those type of business models, we have 3PLs that have e-com, that have full pallet, that have hazmat, that have pharmaceutical, all under the same roof. How do you find a system that's going to handle all of those things for you? I think LCAP is kind of the easy answer for that. That's the best use case for LCAP is to tailor those different business units specifically to what those business unit needs and not creating the airplane cockpit that we mentioned before. Like if you're dealing with this one, flap these 2 things and turn the lever to 2, you don't need that anymore. The user sits down at their console and it's more akin to driving a Tesla at this point.
So, Bryan, what's something that surprised you? Let's pause, mute that. Sorry. So, Bryan, what's something that surprised you most about how customers are using or stretching the capabilities of Datex Studio so far?
So there's 2 main ways that I've been surprised. One is we've had customers just expand into entirely new lines of business and use Datex Studio to make that happen and integrate right along with their WMS. So, for example, we had one customer who one of their lines of business was managing warehouses at various ports. And then utilizing Datex Studio, they were able to take on the business of actually managing the ports themselves. And they built a whole port management and vessel management system inside Studio that sits right alongside the WMS, looks just like the WMS, very seamless integration between the two. And then that leads to the second one is just lots of integration. So our platform makes it very easy to integrate systems. So not only are they integrating tons of systems with the WMS, but we're starting to see them integrate systems that really don't have to do with the WMS. So it's kind of becoming the glue that's holding all the other systems in their enterprise together.
Perfect. So, a last question for both of you. Dave, I'll have you go first. So, for warehouse leaders who are still sitting on the fence with legacy systems, what's one piece of advice you'd give them about embracing more agile, low code tools?
Yeah, I would say if you're not looking at agile low code application platforms, you're probably making a mistake and going to make the wrong investment from a long term perspective. If they're looking at changing a legacy system today in 2025, LCAP is definitely the way that they should be thinking to allow their investment to last a little bit longer. What I mean by that is, again, if they plan on growing, expanding, it allows them easier access into different vertical markets, into different spaces, as opposed to staying on or buying another type of legacy application that is what it is, and you get what you get, right? So I would say definitely embrace the LCAP platform, and that's what they should be looking at.
Thank you. And Bryan?
I guess my piece of advice would be sometimes the benefits aren't immediately obvious. So what I mean by that is by embracing a WMS that's based on a low-code platform, for instance, the ROI math changes on lots of enhancements that on a traditional system would just not be worth it. Like the juice is not worth the squeeze, so to speak. With a LCAP based system, the math changes and that becomes easier to say yes to. It's more economical. So you start stacking a lot of those up and you get real change at the end of the day that you may not have expected. And that this level of adaptability can also be a differentiator when it comes to their own sales team. That same change in the math of ROI of implementing these customizations means they're now able to say yes to some of the things that their customers or prospects might be asking for that their competitors can't do, or maybe they in the past couldn't do. And we've had more than one customer tell us that these LCAP benefits mean that their sales team's win rates have gone up because of that flexibility.
Perfect. And thank you to Dave and Bryan for joining me today on today's episode. It was a great conversation. And thank you, as always, to our listeners. We're here to help you move what matters in your warehouse with unmatched flexibility and unlimited throughput.